Let's take a look at a technology we use every day, the clock. A clock is a man-made timekeeping device which allows humans to accurately measure time. The name originates from the Latin word clocca, meaning bell, making reference to the bells sometimes found on clocks. Depending on the age and the type of the clock, it can keep time in different ways. By definition, a true clock needs two things: a constant repetitive action and a way to mark time. Typically, a clock will display time in hours, minutes, and sometimes even seconds. There are many kinds of clocks. Let's have a look at a few through time. Of course, time is all around us. We can measure months by observing moon cycles, we can measure years by seasons, and we can measure days by the sun. But of course, it is so hard to accurately measure these things, or measure them in smaller increments, without inventing something to help us do so. So humans invented a technology called the gnomon. This was the first device used for measuring time by the sun. Dating back to about 3500 BC, consisting of a vertical stick which indicated the time of day by the length of the shadow cast by the stick as the sun moves throughout the sky. In about 290 BC, moving over to Greece now, the Greeks then created a spherical sundial called the plekonon, which began to form the origins of what we now know as the clock. Due to the unreliability of the sundial, the clock has seen many changes, as it does not work in the rain, cloud, or at night. In around 1400 BC, time was kept in a different way, using a water clock, where water dripping at a near constant rate could be recorded by viewing the increments on the container, seeing how much water has been lost or collected, and transferring it into a time-telling device. This idea is similar to an incense clock, where the steady, constant action is harnessed and used to tell time. We then can move on to a mechanical clock. The first mechanical clock was invented in ancient Europe. This used gears and wheels rotated by weights to start the striking clock as we know it. These were often large and sometimes rang bells or opened doors to signify important times of the day. Did you know o'clock means according to the clock? As solar time varies from season to season, it makes telling time on a sundial slightly different to telling time on a clock, as a clock just divides the time into equal increments. To ensure that others understood one was referencing a clock rather than a sundial, it was referred to as something like 6 of the clock, which then began to be shortened to 6 o'clock or even just 6 o'clock. The mechanical clock was later developed into a clock powered by springs. This was portable and became quite popular due to the ability to be displayed within a home, such as on a mantelpiece. In 1582, an Italian scientist, Galileo, had taken note of swaying chandeliers in a cathedral. He noticed the movement back and forth seemed to be the same no matter how large or small. After experimenting with weights and timing it with his heartbeat, he invented the pendulum. Christian Huygens in 1656 then harnessed the idea, creating what we now know as the pendulum clock. Much later into our modern day, clocks began to be powered by quartz. It works by applying an electrical field to the quartz crystal and makes it change shape. Placed in an electric field, the mechanical stress causes vibrations, creating a cycle and allowing us to keep time. This allows us to not only have portable wall and desk clocks, but also creates watches for our convenience. A common occurrence in our modern day society is the conventional digital clock, which displays time in a numeric representation, with either 12-hour or 24-hour time, most using LCD or LED displays. Other adaptations of the clock can be seen as auditory, speaking the time in the relevant language. This can be used for many reasons, including convenience, blindness, and distance. Other than our convenience clocks, we have also evolved for the purpose of accuracy, seeing the atomic clock being produced, using an electric oscillator to the frequency of atomic transition. Time is said to be kept so accuracy that the clock only loses a second every 300 million years. How accurate is that? Scientists from Denmark have proposed an idea to set a network of clocks in various points around the world and even in space, linked by quantum entanglement, which is really quite confusing if you ask me. But after doing all that science and all those equations, it has been predicted that if we had set up a clock like this at the beginning of Earth, to this day we would not have even lost a second, and that is pretty damn cool if you ask me. So you could say the invention of the clock has helped us to, well, schedule our lives. It helps us to run day to day like we do. It's a form of communication throughout the human race. It helps us know when to do things and how long they take, as well as documentation of when things happen. This documentation then helps us research impacts of certain aspects of our culture to better them, or to realise our consequences of our actions. So without clocks, we would still be relying on estimation and aspects of the solar time to go about our day. And while as a race we would still probably be able to survive, I think it would be somewhat less efficiently, with often a bit more shambles. So clocks help us work more efficiently, and I guess that's a positive. So what negative effects do clocks have? And I guess you could look into the energy used by not only to make clocks, but to keep them running and functional. Since there are many kinds of clocks, let's look into a simple digital clock, say one you find on someone's bedside table. Energy use of a digital clock uses around 25.92 kilowatts on average per year, and that's only if its only function is to be what it is, a clock. And I guess that's really not that much if we think about it. But if we look at the fact that in Western culture we have maybe multiple clocks in each household, and billions of households worldwide running these clocks every year, it still adds up. And not only that, we find clock functions everywhere, microwaves, cars, and our phones, all consuming energy. And I guess it really is time to look at our renewable energy just to run these little everyday appliances in our own homes. Or maybe we could step back in time and maybe revert back to a pendulum or something. That would be pretty cool. So how about our environment? Since there are so many different kinds of clocks, all made by different things, from all different companies and places of the world, it is hard to determine the energy consumption of making a clock. Although I'm sure if we add up all the plastic, metal and other materials, it would amount to a lot of energy due to the materials used. Perhaps a completely recycled and renewable clock is in order? But let's look at another thing. Other than digital clocks, powered by electricity, another common way to run a clock is with a battery, which can contain calcium, lead, mercury, copper, zinc, magnesium, lithium or potassium, which all are hazardous to the environment and also to human health, furthering our world into more landfill when they get chucked out and more carbon emissions in the making and the mining of them. Even the electricity used to run digital clocks all contributes to global warming. So to recap, for the future, we should look into developing this clock made of recycled products that is run by renewable energy and is extremely accurate in telling and keeping the time. In a perfect world, hey?